Hey, deserving listeners, it's just me today. I want to provide a trigger warning alert at the beginning of this episode. I will be talking about sexual assault and rape specifically. I'm not going to be talking about it explicitly, like depicting actual events or anything or stories, but I will be talking about the topic because it is the topic of today's episode. So if you're triggered by this sort of thing, I'm guessing there's a 50% chance that this episode might trigger you and cause you distress related to your PTSD. And so just be forewarned on that. But for many of you who might get triggered by, say, a scene in a movie, I'm guessing that this episode has a good chance that it won't trigger you. So just be warned about that. So I have an email from an anonymous patron. She writes, "Is it normal for a victim of sexual abuse to be into rough sex or rape fantasies? I have a fantasy about the abuse happening again, with the tears and the fear and everything. It feels wrong. Does that mean on some subconscious level that I wanted it to happen? And maybe I even liked it? Does that make it okay? Am I normal?" Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the definition of rape fantasy. I'm going to talk about I'm going to summarize the research that's been going on all the way back into the 50s, 60s, 70s. I'm going to talk about the prevalence rates, how many people actually report having fantasies of rape or similar kinds of fantasies. I'm going to talk about the theory as to why people might have these kinds of fantasies. People have been theorizing about this going back to the 40s and beyond. And so there's been a lot of different ideas, and there's been a lot of research into it as well. There are several known factors that may or may not contribute to this phenomenon of people having fantasies of rape. And also I'll be directly addressing the patrons' questions as to, does that mean that they want it to happen, or are they normal, and whether or not people should be worried about these fantasies. So those are the things. This is going to be a deep dive on this topic. Welcome to the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. This episode is just for patrons of the podcast. So if you're listening to this and you're not a patron of the podcast yet, this episode will end before the content begins. If you want to hear the full episode, you have to become a patron of the podcast by going to patreon.com. That's patreon.com. You might have to go to your computer. You might have to actually, go to the website, go to patreon.com, become a patron, and you will get access to this episode along with hundreds of other deep dives that we've done on various topics such as this.